Thank you for sliding through the return shoot with me for another return shoot special of The Last Video Store. That is right. We've got a wonderful return guest today joining me to talk about some of their favorite movies. If this is your first time joining us on the show, let me tell you about The Last Video Store. This is a show where I, Alexei, a guy who really likes movies, so much so I dare say I love them, will talk to someone about their favorite films. Your favorite people talk about their favorite films. And we do so in the style of an old school video store rental combo. 1 new release, 2 weeklies, and then a staff pick recommendation based on their taste from me. And we've got a very special returning guest today, don't we, Em?
Yeah, we do.
This is one that when he peered back through that return shoot saying, I've got a few movies to drop back, yes. I was so excited because this is one of my favorite guests, Paul Dempsey from Something for Kate, one of my favorite Aussie bands growing up. Mm-hmm. And of course, he came here last time with Bernard Fanning for Fanning Dempsey National Park, there. I guess superstar duo project they have.
Yeah.
Which
Supergroup? Is it a supergroup if there's two people?
I want to say supergroup, but then I got nervous and said super duo. Yeah. But I loved that album last year. His new solo album, and solo in the most truest of senses. One man, one instrument, one take. It is Shotgun Karaoke Volume 2. So it's a second version of cover album that he's done. Volume 1, also fantastic, has this great version of Jesus, etc., the Wilco song, one of my favorite songs on there. Beautiful, beautiful rendition of it. This time it is him basically in his room recording stuff, one take, embodying each of the songs. It's such a fun album, and he's been doing some touring with it as well, kicking off, which I'm so excited to just go see. Because I think there's something interesting about the challenge that he set himself with doing these albums as an experimental project for an artist to be interpreting other people's songs. So I've been very excited to him to come back in. When he came peering through, I go, yes.
Yes, he looked through the gap and he said, "Can I please come in?
Come in.
Okay, Paul Dempsey.
We unlock the doors, bring you in. Yes, it's very late when you come in. But truly so excited. The conversation we had with him the first time round was before your tenure, before you started working at the Last Video Store.
I can't believe it. If you can imagine a Last Video Store without good old producer M.
Yes, it was in the days of producer Alex hanging around.
Yeah, she was awesome.
She was awesome. But I was really looking forward to this because it was such a fun chat. It was very early on in the podcast history. And it was the first time where I've had to pick one film for two people.
Yes.
And I think I did a cool job. I picked that dream scenario. So I'm interested to find out what Paul thinks about that. Recommendation. Too. Hopefully it worked out. Hopefully he's not just returning it unwatched. But really looking forward to hearing that. And I don't know why I'm speaking in future tense now because I have already done the interview.
It's the magic of podcasting.
It's the magic of podcasting. I have done the interview. I'm going to be very clear about that. I do know what he thinks about it, but I will let it to be you to find out in a moment's time.
Exactly.
But such a great chat. Also had this great quote in the first episode that we did together when he picked out Banshees of Inisherin, where he said it's so Irish, it's almost Russian. And that comes back in this episode. I bring it back to him in the best way possible. So please do enjoy our chat with Paul Dempsey. One of the best guests. So sick to have him back. I was so pumped. And we are going to be talking about one new release film, a return pick, and 2 all-time favorites from him. And then I'm going to give him a star pick recommendation based on his taste. But he's a big film lover, so we get deep into some great, great, great films. Like, honestly, we talk about at minimum 2 of the greatest films of all time. And there's 2 more that I say we bring up that are contenders for greatest films of all time. But that is our chat with Paul Dempsey. Let us get into it. But one last thing, going to say 2 little things. Come to see my screening of Dracula at the Opera House with Maria Lewis. Got so much love for Maria's vampire episode.
That episode was awesome.
I'm
so biased, but it was awesome.
Yes, it was awesome. You're on the 1s and 2s, of course you're biased. But it was so fun. Love podcasting with Maria. And the response from you guys was fantastic. So many great comments on the freaking Instagram. Last Video Store Batuta on Instagram. Like the most that we've had maybe ever of just people talking about their favorite vampire movies. That made me so pumped and excited. and really appreciate what a great community we have around this.
Some real discourse as well.
Some true discourse.
Some back and forth,
Yes.
which was great.
There was people saying how much they disagreed with one of the
Uh-huh.
picks. And I was happy to see that it was Maria's pick. And mine still remains untouched and unscathed because it was also a movie of hers that I also didn't like. But do come see our screening of Dracula, talking about vampire movies. And if you've never come to Film Club, this is such a cool way to see a movie. Saturday Morning Film Club at the Opera House, November 1st. Maria and I will present the film, Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. We'll come back out after and kick off a discussion with you, the audience. So it's a great way to also just meet people that love movies. It's really, really fun. A film that's worth talking about, Bram Stoker's Dracula. So come see it with us at the Opera House. Link to those are in the show notes. But also, just that has got me so thinking about how much I love this community. Want to give something back to them. So we are working on something at the moment. Em and I and the Batuta Advocate team here as well. Been thinking about giving something back to the audience in a physical way, I guess. But we are looking at people recommending great movies because it's happening a lot in our Instagram. People in the comments recommending great films, and this is what this show is all about: recommending great films to great people.
Exactly.
So
Jump on the Instagram is all I'll say. Make sure you're engaged there.
Thank you. Jump on that Instagram because we are going to be launching something there for all the great people that have been recommending great films. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let us get into this ripper chat with Paul Dempsey. Here we go. Dempsey, thank you so much for coming back to the Last Video Store.
It's my pleasure, Alexei. Thanks for having me back.
You've got a few late fees. It's been a while since you returned these movies, but I'm going to waive them for you right now regardless. But so happy to have you back here. You're here doing a bunch of gigs for Shotgun Karaoke Volume 2.
Correct.
I'm really fascinated by this album because I'm interested in the idea of adaptation. It's one of the things that interests me most in film, in music.
Yep.
Can you talk to me about, I guess, picking these songs that you've chosen for this album and the performance aspect of it as well is something I'm so fascinated by.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, they're just songs that I really love. You know, the motivation to cover them and attempt some version of them just comes from a sheer love of the song. They're not chosen for any other strategic audience reason or whatever. It's just I love those songs, and also because some of them are pretty maybe unexpected for me and very different from my own songwriting, so that just makes it more fun. But then the sort of method that I go about as well is, I don't know, the idea of trying to record cover versions like properly sort of seems a bit boring to me, so I kind of deliberately put these very strict parameters that I have to sing it in the original key, which forces me to use my voice in strange ways.
To challenge yourself.
Yeah, and it's purely just me, acoustic guitar, live take. No overdubs, no fixes, no edits. So by keeping it really raw and honest like that, it feels like it's almost just like a crazy love letter to this song that I love.
It's very Dogma almost, the way putting these parameters up.
Yeah, well, I guess it kind of gets rid of any pretensions that you're trying to
reinvent,
better the song or reinvent the song or whatever. It's like, no, screw all that. This is just me kind of belting out a love letter.
I like that. I really like that belting out love letter. It's such a nice way to put it because I think you've got such a pretty voice, and I think applying it to these songs, like I remember the first volume where you did Jesus Etc., the Wilco song.
Yeah.
I always loved your version of it because it just, like you said, it felt like a love letter to a great song.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, there's no point trying to do it the way Jeff Tweedy does it. It's his song, and and the original version is just gorgeous. But if you just, like I said, just keep it to the bare essentials and just play it because you love it, then, hopefully your love for it will shine through and carry it, and then people won't be so quick to compare it to the original because that's not the point.
What were the most exciting surprises for you in the process of like hearing yourself perform these songs?
When I did the Cher song, if I could turn back time, like when I started just trying it before I hit record, I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to hit these notes. Some of these notes are kind of crazy, and I'm singing it in the same range that Cher sang it in. So hitting some of those notes was kind of hilarious and fun. But then at the same time, there's tiny little moments where I sing what she sings, and I actually kind of feel like my voice almost sounds a little bit like hers just in these tiny little moments. So that was kind of surprising.
That's the drag delusion coming through.
Yes. Yeah.
But I also really love your take on Losing My Religion as well. Like, I think, what were you channeling trying to find that? Because I think there's something I find fascinating for a singer-songwriter to be performing other people's songs. Can you talk to me about, I guess, finding stuff in the lyrics and the emotional performance of the emotional aspect of the performance?
Yeah, I mean, look, that song to me is just on such a pedestal. To me, it's just a damn near perfect song, and Michael Stipe's vocal is so idiosyncratic and unique, and I think that's why it was such a massive song, because there's such vulnerability in his vocal delivery and the lyrics, and just the you can hear that there's like nerves and awkwardness. It's almost, it's a song about someone who sounds very I'm not even sure what he's talking about, but there's an anxiety and an emotion that runs through the song. And I don't know, for me, there's just something about it that just when I play it and sing it, it just puts you in that space. And so you're just singing it, the way you heard it, but it brings something. It brings that emotion out of you as well. And then it also brings an added level of anxiety because I'm playing the guitar part, the bass part, and the mandolin part at the same time.
It's a complex song. When I was listening to it, I couldn't believe how you were, like, there was an exchange between instrument and vocal in a way that I couldn't believe was one person.
Yeah, like
It feels like a flow state you're in.
It's it's fun to do. I was pretty, I will admit to being a little bit chuffed when I, worked out how to play all the parts in as one piece, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Because those parts are so fundamental to the song, the mandolin, the guitar, the bass line. There's things that are happening that if you lost any one of those things, it wouldn't work. So I only kind of definitely decided to do it when I figured out that I could somehow manage it all. And so that makes it really fun to play.
I mean, I'm very excited for it. Shotgun Karaoke Volume 2. It's out as of now.
Yeah.
It is going to be, as this episode arrives in your ears, so will the absolute beautiful renditions of many songs like Twist My Sobriety, which you would not particularly expect you'll be covering, but beautifully done so. And also, I'm going to give an extra recommendation to Volume 1 as well. Truly, like I said, that Jesus Etc. Cover is so beautiful to me. But now we're here talking about movies.
Yes.
I've been so excited for you to come back because you truly are one of my favorite guests we've had.
Oh.
There's a quote of yours from the first time you appeared on this episode, on this podcast, that I shall bring back at a certain point because it's stuck with me for so long. But the way this works, you're a return guest. You're going to pick up some more movies. You're going to return some of the ones you brought last time. Yep. And then I'll give you some extra recommendations. But last time I recommended you a film, you were here with Bernard Fanning, and it was my first time recommending a movie to two people where I was trying to bring two tastes together.
Yep.
And the movies you picked up Groundhog Day and Banshees of Inisherin. Bernard picked up, I remember it was Living in Oblivion, this great film about making of movies. And I really, really thought about it, but Groundhog Day was the key film for me to kind of jump off and give recommendations on. And the movie I brought was Christoph Borley's Dream Scenario.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did, yeah, and I loved it.
You loved it?
Fantastic film.
Yeah.
It's it's hilarious. It's one of Nicolas Cage's finest performances, I think. And it's just so clever. I mean, I think essentially it's a movie about the life cycle of a meme or a virus, and he's an evolutionary biologist. So, it's that whole kind of thing of we're going to study the stages of this thing's growth and death and then kind of reproduction at the end. It's just so cleverly done.
I think it's such a great way to put it, because it starts with this kind of far out premise, comedy, high premise comedy of there's this guy who has been appearing in everybody's dreams, and it's a real guy.
Yep.
And he becomes famous from it. And there's something in that we go, oh, that sounds like an interesting kind of spiritual, thoughtful, or in maybe even comedic take on something like Nightmare on Elm Street. There's so many different ways you can take that.
Yep.
But then take it in the way of this guy becoming famous, then this guy becoming cancelled because of what some of the things that he's doing in these dreams are. I think it's a fascinating way to kind of take that.
Yep.
And there's something about that which I think leads to some of the best comedy in the film.
Yep.
Like you said, great Nicolas Cage performance. He's such a great and fucking weird comedic performer.
Yeah.
So that when he gets placed into films like this, it just sings in such an interesting tone. And the scene from this film that I've thought about most is the scene where there's a young woman that has had a sex dream about him. And then her trying to make that a reality, and it just being this complete misadventure that is both upsetting but upsettingly funny.
Yeah.
I think it's just such a strange tone this film strikes.
Yeah, for sure. They're not afraid to go there. I mean, that scene is so incredibly awkward and embarrassing, and just her reaction. There's a moment, and her reaction is just priceless. And just the horror on his face. Yeah, it's really good. And look, I love it as well. We talked about Groundhog Day last time. I love the fact that they don't waste any time explaining why this has happened. Mm-hmm. It's just like, this has happened, off we go. They don't waste time. There's no, it's very tight. It's very well put together.
I think that's something that is kind of not, it's one of those things where it's not thought about enough, where audiences, for the most part, they're signing a contract when they enter a cinema going, I'm going to meet this film on its terms. Yep. I'm entering a world of this film.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you don't need explanation too much for these big premises.
Yep.
Because people are just willing to buy it.
For
and,
sure.
It's the same thing in Groundhog Day, where originally there was going to be a scene with a witch's curse being put on him and stuff. But you watch it go, why would you have a witch in this movie? It feels so clean and feels so not psychological but philosophical, the journey it takes you on. And I think Dream Scenario is the same thing, but then takes you on this like weird current contemporary cultural journey as well, which works so well.
For sure. And yeah, they just hit, as I say, like for an evolutionary biologist, it hits every single point in that life cycle from the moment it appears, and then the marketing company trying to turn it into a sellable moment, and then later on you get the sort of the company trying to turn it into like this commodity where everyone can control their dreams in these ways, and it's very, very clever.
Well, I'm going to ask you, did I do a good job?
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
Thank goodness.
And I watched it with my family. We all loved it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's not the film that I would recommend for an entire family, but I'm glad they still enjoyed it.
Yep.
Now, we've got to give you a special treat. You're going to head around the store, pick up a few movies, some favorites, some all-timers, come back, and I'll try and give you a different style of recommendation as well.
Okay, great.
New release.
Yep.
I saw you eyeing off a film in our new release section over here, and this is a film that I have been dying to talk about. I think absolute contender for maybe the best film of the year, but certainly a film that feels so exciting and so vital. You picked up the latest film from Paul Thomas Anderson, One Battle After Another.
Yep.
Thriller.
Absolutely loved this film. I'm a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson right since Hard 8.
Oh my God, from the start.
Yeah.
You're at day one.
I think I own it on DVD still. And I'm also a big fan of Thomas Pynchon. So I had read Vineland many years ago now, though. My memories of it were kind of hazy, but then watching the film, it all kind of came back. I think it's pretty close to the book. Obviously, it's modernized. I think the book was written in the 70s. But look, absolutely loved it. The performances were spectacular. I don't remember some of the actors' names, but the woman who played Perfidia Beverly Hills and the young lady who plays his daughter, just incredible performances.
Yeah, I will say that is actress Tiana Taylor, who plays Perfidia Beverly Hills, and Chase Infinity's a newcomer that plays their daughter together.
Yeah.
Both spectacular performances. That Tiana Taylor performance, I think for a lot of people, comes out of nowhere because she is more known as a musician and a true multi-hyphenate, model, choreographer, everything.
Yeah.
And her performance is so tactile, like so... like, how can you describe it better? Like, sultry in an intimidating way, but then also in a vulnerable way. The way that she kind of interacts, the way that she uses, I guess, touch in interesting and funny ways. Yeah, she's in this great movie that it was a Netflix film. I don't think many people saw it, called 1001. And I remember seeing her in that a couple of years ago and just thinking this is one of the best lead performances I've seen in such a long time. Yeah. And I think she's just a really, really special, interesting actor that the camera just absolutely adores. Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I think really works about this film, I feel like this is a film that is such a masterpiece of propulsive, kinetic energy that keeps pushing you forward. Yeah. And a big part of that, I think, is one, the soundtrack of mixtape kind of found music, but truly that Johnny Greenwood score of just pushing and pushing you forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other point I would make about how impressive that is, that it has this sort of non-stop, momentum, is that I had a moment watching it where, there's a sequence later in the film where, there's a car chase and it starts, the camera's like mounted on the front of a car and you get this incredible undulating effect of the roads. But up until that point in the film, I hadn't, and it wasn't until that moment that I kind of went, I hadn't noticed the director. You get through most of that movie really not feeling that it's being directed. There's no, directorial shenanigans or showing off or whatever. It just all happens in front of you, and it's kind of seamless and beautiful and amazing to look at, but you're not like, clever, nicely done, you're not like assessing the filmmaking, because it just picks you up and carries you along. And then it's not until later in the film that it kind of, you start to notice that's like, okay, now we're, there's some directorial stuff happening. But it happens at an interesting point though, where the whole thing has changed gears. So it's, there's a lot of kind of amazing little layers to it.
I love the way you say changed gears, because I think there's something interesting in that last, like that back quarter, where it simultaneously slows down. It becomes more simpler, where it just becomes a chase. The stakes are very, very clear and almost symbolic. But then that last quarter, even though it becomes more simple, it feels slower. But I don't think I breathed for like the last probably 35 minutes of that film.
I know what you mean. It's also because just visually it just turns into this expanse, because they're just out in the middle of nowhere. And prior to that, you've been in all these tight spaces, So I know what you mean.
Before we move on, the one thing I really want to say about this film as well, one of my first thoughts about this film upon seeing it was, it felt like the first time I saw Sean Penn, the same actor that played Spicoli 40 years ago. Like, he's been such a different actor and such like a, played a crumb a lot of times and stuff like that. Yeah. But seeing him in this movie, I go, oh, that's the same actor that played Spicoli 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Yeah. Yeah, he's an amazing character. He's
just Walk Alone is like one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in a film, and it just totally works.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just seeing a guy like go, oh, there's moments you see him sitting down, you go, he's clearly wearing lifts and it's part of the character, and then it gets called out in the film. You go, this is so funny.
Yeah. And the transformation towards the end as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of like, whoa.
Weekly.
That is one battle after another. I'm so glad we got to talk about it. I've been dying to talk about it on this podcast. But you've picked up a couple of films from our weekly section. I say we should start with one which I'm very glad you picked up because I think there's a clear inspiration, at least in the cover art of Shotgun Karaoke. And it's the first time this has ever been picked up in the store as well.
Oh, wow.
I'm brushing the dust off this film that you picked up from our beautiful horror section here. But you picked up Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yep.
Horror.
Absolutely one of my all-time faves. I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, and I've just watched all his films over and over, and read all the biographies, and I just think he is a consummate artist from inception to execution. His kind of vision and skill over every aspect of the process is incredible. There's not many like it. And
it's a true sense of control as well. And I think with The Shining, it is that sense of control and the exciting part, or one of the exciting parts of it. Kubrick has such a sense of control, but his casting of Jack Nicholson and the performance Jack Nicholson is giving, and then the casting of Shelley Duvall and the performance Shelley Duvall is giving, there is something so uncontrollable about those performances that I think those two, immovable force and unstoppable energy, or whatever that terminology is that I just screwed up, those meeting of those artists all coming together, I think creates something that is, there's a unique pleasure to watching this film. And pleasure may be the wrong word, because oftentimes watching this film, it can be an entirely unpleasurable experience. Yeah. But it is truly, it's one of those films that every time I've revisited, I go, oh yeah, this is one of the best films ever made.
For sure, for something in the kind of horror genre, to move so slowly and so carefully, and it just, lulls you into, a different state, and you kind of get to experience Jack Nicholson and Jack Torrance. You kind of get to experience his slow unraveling over a creative pursuit. He's just trying to do some writing, and it's just unraveling.
Do you ever feel akin to that?
That's kind of, I have to admit, it's, I initially, I've often watched this film, sometimes just viewing it through the lens of it's a film about a guy with writer's block. And in fact, Something for Kate's fifth record, Desert Lights, was a very difficult record for me to write. And on the liner notes inside, at the very end of the thank yous, there's a special thanks to Jack, Wendy, Lloyd, and Danny. Jack, Wendy, Danny, and Lloyd.
Good. I'm glad Danny got the shout out as well.
Yeah, and then of course, with this new record being a covers record, and I did the same thing with Shotgun Karaoke Volume 1, the cover of the album is also a cover of a cover. So Shotgun Karaoke Volume 1 paid homage to the cover of Hunter S. Thompson's Songs of the Doomed. And with this record, it's obviously a cover or an homage to The Shining. But in both cases, it's me destroying something that plays music.
Yeah.
Like the first one, I'm shooting at a record player, and this time I'm taking the axe to a jukebox. So.
And it's in kind of like a popper, almost like, like not mosaic, but like a kind of like a almost put together pop art style as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like me versus the music. But yeah, it's such a, Jack Torrance swinging that axe is such an iconic movie moment.
Oh, absolutely. I think the first volume of 1001 movies you must see before you die, or whatever it's called. That version that I had, the first one I had, was that image of Jack Nicholson peering through the torn apart door.
Crack, yeah.
So it's one of those images that has stuck with me since falling in love with film when I was probably 13 years old.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to the first time you saw this film? Because I think thinking about this as a horror film, it's one that can sneak into someone's life quite early.
Absolutely, and that's exactly how it did. It snuck into my life because I have 3 older sisters, and they're quite a bit older than me. And so I remember being a really little kid and not being allowed in the living room because my sisters were watching The Shining, and it was like, "Don't come in," so I would be in my room or whatever. But I always remember hearing through the door, just hearing this red rum, and it just the sound of that, it just gave me the heebie-jeebies. It scared the shit out of me and gave me nightmares, from the time I was a little kid until I finally saw the film, probably 10 years later. So I was already scared of it, and I hadn't even seen it because it had just, was just living in my mind in a dark corner. So when I finally did watch it and I was a bit older, I was actually kind of surprised because it's beautiful to look at. It's just stunningly beautiful, especially those opening sequences where they're just, driving through the valleys. And I was surprised that it wasn't like this kind of slasher movie, that it really takes its time and it really, explores all these different headspaces. And then I didn't find it scary at all. I sort of don't think of it as a horror movie, but I guess it is. Look, the other thing that I love about Kubrick is that he almost made the best film in every genre.
And then they feel, it's hard to even think of them as part of that genre as well, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. He almost kind of like reinvented the genre every time. Full Metal Jacket, the war film, and Doctor Strangelove as a comedy, and sci-fi, and he just whatever he did, he just kind of did it like so uniquely and incredibly.
I think another thing that sets this film apart is I really love the music attached to this film, like the oral experience of this film, the sonic of this film, because it is synthesized music, often interpretations of classical music or stranger music. Like what kind of kicks this film off is a synthesized arrangement of medieval chant called Day of Wrath.
And it's the great Wendy Carlos, one of the great film composers and absolute synth pioneers. She's just incredible. And
it just sets you on this edge that works so well. I think what this movie does so well is it, in that kind of slow cinema sense you're talking about, like this is a slow movie, it's very deliberately paced, and the way that it accesses the fear is through unease, in pulling you along, feeding you little bits, taking you on like a surrealistic journey as well, that feels like a supernatural journey. Like, all the stuff of going through all the little rooms, going through all the corridors of this haunted hotel, it feels more scary because it doesn't feel like, oh, these are movie ghosts. These feel like the ghosts that you philosophically encounter of darkness when you feel like you're in a bad place.
That's right. He actually, he leaves enough space for every viewer to bring all of their own fear and all of their own baggage, and then he does just enough to capitalize on all that shit that's hiding inside you already, and just, everybody talks about the tricycle on the carpet and just the sound of the tricycle hitting it. I mean, that is like, who would have thought that could be so just eerie and affecting, and obviously he sees the twins at the end of it all, but just to take those little things, and even like Lloyd the bartender, just being a bartender, just being a pretty normal, friendly bartender, but we all know he's not there.
No one should be there.
But all he's doing is serving Jack Nicholson a drink. There's nothing, like, everything about that scene that feels sinister and frightening is, you brought it there. You brought that with you, because it's not really happening on the screen. It's he just tickles you, whatever dark stuff you're hiding, what every viewer is hiding, he just knows how to tickle it.
That is the dark magic of Stanley Kubrick.
Yes.
We're talking about The Shining, his absolute masterpiece from 1980, and you talked about this idea of leaving enough space to bring stuff in, like this, which is like the transcendental quality of film. And the next film that you've picked is probably by the person that is most associated with exactly that feeling, the transcendental nature of film, leaving enough room in there for your mind to start wandering, for your mind to start thinking about things from one's own life, from one's own experience, to become existential in the space of atmosphere.
Yep.
You've picked up from Andrei Tarkovsky, Stalker.
Cult.
And this is a film I've been very excited to talk to you about. Going all the way back to a thing I just talked about before, The Shining, 1001 movies to see before you die. One boy's entry point into film. There was an image from this in that book that stuck with me forever, which is the image of the man with like the wreath of thorns around his head. And then of course the image of just before they go to this room, which is like these kind of hilly mounds of like snow, dust, sand. And they've stuck with me for a long time. And I remember seeing this movie when I was about probably 15 years old on a pretty crummy, shitty DVD and never having the chance to revisit it. But I did when I saw it was coming up as one of your picks. And it's one of the most spectacular films ever made. Can you talk to me about Stalker and your experience in discovering this film?
Yeah, so I was put onto this movie and I watched it the first time with my good friend Bart Borghese, who's a filmmaker, and he directed like 20 or 25 Something for Kate videos over the years, and we're good friends, and you know, we would watch films together and talk film a lot, and so he sat me down to watch Stalker probably 20 years ago now, and it just blew my mind. It, as you say, there's so much space, and it invites you and kind of, you know, pulls you into this, you know, very different space that not a lot of films can achieve, because it's so, it lingers so long on almost every shot. There's so much just to look at, and it's, you know, it was made sort of before I believe the budget was like 1 million rubles or something like that, but it seems kind of low.
I have no idea
what that
would
achieves.
Be.
Yeah, exactly. But it certainly kind of has the look of a low budget film. But then I also kind of think, but maybe Tarkovsky just wasn't trying to be expansive or whatever. It's just so. It's similar to The Shining in those ways that it moves so, but it's way slower, and it's way more grim and bleak and dank in a way that only a kind of like Soviet era film can be. And but everything is so spare. The characters don't even have names. You know, there's the stalker, the writer, and the professor. And you don't really learn, even though they all sort of expound at great length about their philosophies and desires, you don't really know them. You just know that they've come searching for something, and they decide not to find it.
Yeah.
And that is, as well, is a real kind of, you've gone on this very long journey into this space that again, it's almost a bit like all the other films we talked about. They don't bother telling you the premise behind this space, the zone. They just tell you that no one goes in, because if you do go in, then your wishes might just come true, and we haven't decided whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. So you've got to be kind of a brave person to want to test that. But yeah, they don't waste any time on how did this happen. I mean, the book, it's based on a book called Roadside Picnic, and the book sort of goes into a little bit about, you know, that maybe some aliens visited and left this zone behind, but the film doesn't sort of waste any time on that. And the film doesn't even, you know, the characters in the book are more kind of developed and quite different as well. Like the stalker character in the book is this kind of like rowdy, drunken, almost like pirate kind of dude. Yeah. But in the film, he's much more, he's kind of heartbreaking, the way he's played in the film, because he's almost childish.
Yeah.
Like he's there's a desperation and a vulnerability to the character in the film that isn't in the book. But yeah, I just sort of feel like the zone maybe represents the same place that, you know, art comes from. That, you know, we don't really know where it comes from. Whether you're a spiritual person or a non-spiritual person, or whatever your beliefs happen to be, you know, art comes from somewhere, and accessing that can be, you know, as dangerous as it can be rewarding, And it occurs to me as well that all the films I've chosen in some way are about writers who can't get anything written.
And they're all interesting adaptations of stuff where they're adapting something quite that could be done in a very direct way, but they're interpreting them in an interesting way.
Yeah, and exactly. They leave a lot for the viewer to bring their own kind of thoughts and philosophies to it and meet it in the middle somewhere.
One of the reasons I was very excited to see that you pick up Stalker was in our first conversation together when we were talking about Banshees of Inisherin, you said something that was so funny and so insightfully spot on to me about that film. You said it's so Irish that it's almost Russian. When you speak about like the kind of writerly quality of that film and the kind of darkness and the bleakness, the attitude of that film.
Yeah.
And I think that made me so excited seeing that you're picking up one of the darkest, bleakest Russian films possible. Made me so happy.
Yes. Well, I do come from an Irish family, so it's maybe there's some link there.
That
somewhere.
one step further. I think this is such an interesting film to compare it as well to Kubrick. I know that Tarkovsky did not always like Kubrick. I think he saw 2001: A Space Odyssey and called it like a comic book movie, which is so bizarre to think about now because that to me is one of the most cinematic experiences one can have.
Yeah.
He thought it was too popcorn, basically.
Right.
And that's when he starts making Solaris. He's like, Solaris is a bit of a response to 2001. Oh, is that the case? Yes. And then with Stalker as well, it's a science fiction novel that he adapts without any science fiction element really at all.
Yeah.
The closest you get to it is like, almost the same Wizard of Oz trick where the film, when you're in the outside world, is in this sepia tone, but when you enter the zone, it springs forward in this kind of deep blue-green foresty color.
Yeah.
The thing that really stuck with me on this revisit to the world of Stalker was the music. I think is so interesting. It is by Eduard Artemiev, who was a previous collaborator with Tarkovsky on Solaris, The Mirror, and this is their third film together, Stalker. And it's interesting because it doesn't really have themes. Like it doesn't have and that's kind of true across most of Tarkovsky's work. So I started looking into it. I found this great interview with Eduard Artemiev where he talks about not developing themes. Tarkovsky saw the composer as the composer of background sounds. So collecting the sounds that are actually organically there and sound design as well, and then enhancing them with some kind of music. But he was very clear in saying this is not a concert. It's not orchestral.
I mean, I think you could almost describe most of the score as running water. There's actually very little music.
Very
you hear
little.
the score at the beginning and the end. There's a little bit, I think, somewhere in the middle of the film, maybe when they're in the room. But for the most part, there is no music, and the sound is a lot of running water, which is another thing that, it kind of comes up a lot in Tarkovsky's films. It's in Solaris a lot as well. It's just, there's always these long shots of just kind of flowing water. And I think, he's suggesting, what's on the surface, what's under the surface. There's usually stuff in the water, like oil dispersing or something, and then like something moving underneath it, maybe a gun under the water. So I think he's always hinting at surface and subsurface, but also flow and change, and that kind of reoccurs in Tarkovsky's stuff. But the sound is... It's almost jarring in Stalker because it's so badly recorded, and there's moments. There's one real obvious moment where like a Jeep sort of screeches to a halt, but the screech sounds like it's taken from like a cop show or something, and it's the sound of rubber on asphalt, but they're actually in a Jeep on gravel, and it's just like, what? There's a few little things like that where you kind of go, what is going on with the sound here? But again, maybe that's what 1,000,000 rubles gets you in 1979.
I think the other thing that is so useful about this movie for people that are interested in film is like just watching this film, you genuinely learn so much and absorb so much through like the mise en scène, to learn about composition, to learn about everything. Because it's, like you said, long sustained shots. It's like shots where you just see all three primary characters through a doorway. That was a song.
Yeah.
That shot really stuck with me this time. We were looking through this doorway. All three characters are in the same shot, different levels. Some of them are standing in front of each other.
It's like a religious painting. You know, there's kind of two of them with their backs to each other, and one of them, you know, there's an iconography that springs to mind just when you look at that shot, and he sits on it for ages. Yeah, it's really. But then he does some other strange things as well. I mean, it definitely. The acting in particular and the way the scenes are filmed, it feels very like theatre being captured on film, because there's a lot of, you know, sort of monologues and you know, expounding on a subject, you know, while the other two actors are sort of just looking at the ground or whatever. So that kind of stuff is a little strange, but in a really sort of magnetic way. And then, you know, it ends really weirdly as well. It ends like with a monologue to camera. Like suddenly sort of we're back in sepia
Speaking
world.
directly to...
And it's like, what's going on now? And then, like you said before, there's very little obvious sci-fi element, but you do get that scene at the end of the daughter sort of, you know, telekinetically moving a glass around because she's sort of a child of the zone, and her world is in colour, even though everything else, when everyone else is back in sepia. So, you know, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, you kind of can never stop thinking about this movie once you've seen it. I think that's the way with a lot of Tarkovsky films. Like last year, I saw Andrei Rublev for the first time, and that is a film that has stuck into my brain entirely since then. It's a film that I cannot stop thinking about. And it's kind of led me to thinking about Tarkovsky and reading a bit about Tarkovsky in an interesting way. And there was this quote that I found around Tarkovsky where he talks about cinema is so young, especially when he was making it. It's under 100 years old, basically. Cinema is so young that it has no roots. So he looks to older art forms for inspiration and for connectivity for them. So the music is, like you said, this is very rarely any music in this film. And then when he does use music in films like in Solaris, often it's Bach. So he's like, he wants it to be older masters to give the film roots. And the visual aspect of his films, same thing, where he looks at the old masters, you know, Da Vinci even, to give his film and to give cinema roots that dig deeper into the audience's mind, so that so it feels older, deeper, with deeper roots.
Yeah, it makes sense, you know, to like ground it in some tradition, so it doesn't feel like some freewheeling fantasy, you know, or cheap or something. I mean, you know, I guess like, you know, Kubrick, you know, with a film like The Shining, he goes with, you know, the brand new sort of modern sounds of Wendy Carlos, but for his ultimately futuristic sci-fi movie, he also went to a classical score. You know? Yeah.
Hey, good stuff.
Yeah.
Staff pick.
Beautiful picks, I got to say, Paul. Beautiful, beautiful picks. It has set me the challenge to try and recommend you something really good. And I really want to think of, when I thought about Stalker and The Shining, I even would say One Battle After Another, I'd lump into this same category as films that it becomes your whole day watching it, regardless of length. Like these movies are long, but they're not insanely long or anything. But I want to try and find your film that has that feeling for me, where you go, I'm watching it and it becomes my entire day, where I dedicate myself to it. And I think that I was trying to think of stuff within that same kind of era as well. And I thought about this film that has become one of my favorite films. It was a discovery for me back in film school, and my sound and composing film composition music lecturers are the ones who brought it to my attention. It's by one of my favorite artists, Paul Schrader. It's a film called Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters.
Drama.
Have you seen this film?
No, I haven't.
Thank God, because you're going to love this one.
All
This
right.
is such a cool movie. It is rare film from Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader, of course, best known for like Taxi Driver, First Reformed. His films about God's Lonely Man. And Mishima is definitely God's Lonely Man. But this is such an interesting, bizarre take that you would not associate with the kind of grime and grit of Paul Schrader's films that include even more recent stuff like First Reformed. But Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters is the story of Japan's most celebrated and one of their most controversial writers, Yukio Mishima, who is many things, but one of them is like an ultra-nationalist.
All right.
And this is a film that is this incredibly beautifully told and stylistic retelling of his life. It's not a biographical film at all. And the way I would describe it best is it is a film that takes in a lot of art from masters old and new and uses those to interpret this man's life. So he's an author. This film takes shape of his life in a kind of non-linear way. And during these kind of sequences of his life, you're seeing that version of that film being told to you in the Japanese cinema of that time.
Oh.
So when you're seeing him as a young man, it's very Ozu. And then when you're seeing him in the stuff that's closer to contemporary, it's in color and feels like very direct, almost verite style.
Yeah.
And interspersed throughout his life, you see awoken his novels, like complete tellings of his novels as almost short film sequences in between. And each one of those is in different style but vivid color, and they all feel very play-built. Like they feel like sets, if anything. Very theatrical rather than cinematic. And there's something in those elements kind of coming together that I think create this really powerful, holistic experience that I would put in the same category as stuff as The Shining, stuff as Tarkovsky. And it's a kind of film that you go, I cannot believe Paul Schrader made this movie. Like, I think he's a great artist, but it's not a film that you could not, if you saw the rest of his films, it wouldn't be one where you go, well, I could have dreamt he made this one.
Yep.
It's so different and so beautifully stylized. But the reason that it kind of came to my life was, like I said, my sound and composing lecturers brought it to me. And it has this incredible Philip Glass score.
Right.
And I think it's, next to Candyman, it's my favorite Philip Glass score. And it's a bit more rock. There's like a bit of a Japanese rock element to it as well. Okay. In a very it's a very gentle, I'm putting that very gently. I'm not going to say you're going to rock out listening to this Philip Glass score. But more so than that, and I think it's something that I associate with Stalker and probably Kubrick as well, is every sound in the interstitial moments where you're kind of looking through his books and you're seeing these books be brought to life as his fable-like short films. Every sound in those is a digital creation. So you're hearing birds chirping, but they're synthesizers.
Yeah, right.
And I think there's something about that is just, it's so beautiful. Like it's something beautiful to behold.
Yeah. It's an interesting decision just to specifically do that for those moments.
Yeah, it's like a real sonic experience this film takes you on. I think that you will get a lot out of it because I think of you as a very proper, quite serious cinephile from our two conversations together. Someone who's willing to go a bit deeper and find something. And I think there's something in this film that I would put in that same category. Yeah. And it's only 2 hours long, but like I said, it's a movie that will take your whole day.
Okay, good. I like it. And look, I did pick Tarkovsky, but I did pick Groundhog Day too.
Exactly. You've got the full
It's a
gamut.
broad spectrum.
That's a true cinephile, you love all of them. And I think that's what is so beautiful about loving movies. You can love them all. I mean, Tarkovsky himself, one of his last favorite movies was Terminator 1.
It's genius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he loves it all. But Paul Dempsey, thank you so much once again for joining me inside the Last Video Store. You've picked up a freaking elite list of films with us here today. You returned Dream Scenario. You picked up One Battle After Another, The Shining, Stalker, and you've also got your recommendation from me, Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters. One of the most spectacular films. I would say all these films are epic, but not in the sense of an American epic. They are epics, but in a very, all of them transcendental way that are worth watching.
Yep, for sure. Oh well, my Saturday night's sorted.
Hey, probably Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. You might need a recovery day as well. Okay. But thanks so much, Paul. Absolute pleasure to have you back here inside the Last Video Store.
Thanks, Alexei.
The Last Video Store.
So that was our chat with Paul Dempsey. Something for Kate. Now, Shotgun Karaoke Volume 2. Honestly, one of my favorite chats we've had. we're in a good run of talking with like great people
Yeah,
that really love movies.
Never hyperbolic. You
I
have
am.
never exaggerated or been hyperbolic.
I am one of the least hyperbolic people on planet freaking Earth. But truly, people that love movies make me love them.
I know.
I'm
And
gonna
that's
say
why
it.
we love you.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Em and Simba. We also have not talked. You got your dog in the studio with us
Yes,
today.
I think you can hear him like coughing and whining.
Yeah.
That's actually not me.
Yeah, if you
That's
can
my
hear
dog.
someone whinnying into the microphone, let it be known it is Simba the
My
dog.
16-year-old dog.
Yeah, poor Simba. He loves to whine and whinny into the microphones.
So perfect for a podcast.
Perfect for the podcast. But truly, Paul Dempsey, one of the best guests because he loves movies deeply. He picked up some great films. He loved Dream Scenario. Thank God.
Oh my god, I was
Were you scared?
okay. The producer in me said it would have been great if he hated it, and you guys like had to fight it out in the podcast. But
Yeah,
I
I'm
also
good at what I do.
I also love the film, so I was
Yeah.
actually just relieved to know that he clearly has good taste.
He
I
has
loved
really
that
good
film.
taste.
I really did.
Really good taste. Dream Scenario. He loved it. I felt relief whenever people say they love the movie. He also picked up One Battle After Another. And I'll let the record show it was only because we started talking about
Yes.
it seconds before we started recording. Go, this is good. Do you want to just hold this and we'll talk about this as
I
well?
don't think he's going to be the last to pick that as their
I don't
new
think
release.
so. And there's so much to talk about that film. We barely
Yes.
scraped the surface. One Battle After Another, you can still see in the cinemas right now.
And you should,
Yeah.
100%. It's awesome.
Absolutely great film. Also on the Batuta Advocate TikTok, I did a little TikTok review for the film, saying how much I love the film. Hopefully, I do more shit like that. I'm trying to become a TikTok influencer by never doing my own stuff. Picked up The Shining, all-time great. Picked up Stalker. Have you seen Stalker?
No, I haven't.
It's a trip for you into the zone of art house.
Perfect.
Go for it. One of the best films. Like truly transcendental. I've been thinking about it a lot because when Jonathan Rhys-Meyers came on the show, he picked up Andrei Rublev.
Yes.
Talked a little bit about that in the episode, but that is the best discovery experience I've had since starting the podcast. So
Damn.
thank you, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, for helping me have one Tarkovsky reference in my pocket ready to shoot back at Paul Dempsey.
Can you imagine if you hadn't seen The Shining either? And you were like... and he recommended The Shining,
He
which is
recommended
this little horror movie
It's weird.
It's
a
so
weird movie.
weird.
And my recommendation for him and for all of you is Mishima: A Life in 4 Chapters. I was just saying to Paul, because when he was heading out the door, he'd never heard of that film and he was surprised. And I have this feeling that it's only just started to get its love from film-loving communities. It's got a Criterion 4K Blu-ray and all that stuff now in very, very recent years. Like this is a film that I think I see more and more people chucking up in their letterbox, maybe in their top 4 and stuff like that. But I think for a lot of people, it's a recent discovery because I don't think it got its due in its day and didn't retain that legacy until right now. But it's one of the most spectacular films made, and it's by one of the great artists, Paul Schrader, who is well worth a follow on Facebook because he is interesting. But that is our chat with Paul Dempsey. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Last Video Store. Like we said in the intro, hit up Last Video Store Batuta on Instagram. We're going to be doing some fun stuff over there very soon. So keep recommending movies. I'm going to put up a little Instagram image in a few days asking for your recommendations for Paul Dempsey. So start using this time to think about what you would recommend to him, and it may pay off for you in the future of the Last Video Store.
And where else can you recommend a film to Paul Dempsey? That's cool as hell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That is why I started the show as well.
Unless you're stopping him on the street and being like, by the way,
Yeah.
if you like The Shining.
By the way, I heard you mention The Shining. I actually think you should watch Stanley Kubrick's, the one that he doesn't like, which is the adaptation of The Shining made for TV. That's Stephen King's favorite version of it.
That's good. You, straight from the dome,
So
Alexei.
this is a bad movie. I'm not
okay.
recommending it to anyone. It's really
Okay.
shit. But watch Dr. Sleep. Bye.